Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers, James and Justin back again, and today we're going to continue our Project Zamzam series. We're going to be looking at Surah 4, which is Surah An-Nisa, which is the woman, I think. Now, this might be our last one of the Project Zamzams for a while because he hasn't done one on Surah 5 yet. And so I'm going to wait for Surah 5 to come out before we can react to that. I just like to stay in order, and I know the Quran isn't written in like chronological order. It's kind of like all over the place, so he's kind of gone from thing to thing. And so whenever it gets back to 5, we'll come back to it. But anyway, guys, we won't keep you waiting. Let's get into it.
An-Nisa, the women, is chapter 4 in the Quran. This Medinian chapter came to emphasize the importance of justice, particularly when it comes to the treatment of women, whether it's at home, in our community, or on a societal level. The chapter came to establish and protect the rights of women. It also came to protect other vulnerable groups, such as orphans and bondswomen. This message of justice and mercy isn't just for Muslims, but for all human beings. In fact, the chapter begins by addressing all of humanity. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء. O humanity, be mindful of your Lord, who created you from a single soul, and from it he created its mate, and through both he spread countless men and women, reminding us that Adam and Eve came from the same soul, and that we all descended from them both. The verse continues by saying, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلَيْكُمْ رَقِيبًا. And be mindful of Allah, in whose name you appeal to one another, and honor family ties. Surely God is ever watchful over you. Highlighting the importance of taqwa, which means being mindful of Allah, and knowing that He can see everything we say and do. Having this constant awareness of Allah helps keeps us in check. This chapter is a blueprint on how to treat women and others who are vulnerable, fairly and kindly. So let's look at it in more detail. Remember, this was revealed at a time when many of the common practices and norms, not only within Arabian society, but even in Europe and other parts of the world, were detrimental and abusive to women. For example, men were used to marrying many women and would often replace their spouses with other women whenever they desired. The chapter came not only to put a limit on polygamy, but placed other conditions that made it almost impossible to rightfully marry more than one woman. So even though the chapter indicates that men can marry not only one, but 2, 3, or a maximum of 4 women, they must be able to treat them all equitably and fairly. And since this is almost impossible to do, the chapter makes it clear to only marry one woman. Also, a man is required to pay a dowry to his bride, and it has to be given to her, not her father. And it has to be given to her graciously as a gift, out of his own kindness and love for her. It also becomes her property, so he cannot take it back from her later, even after he divorces her, which was common practice back then. The chapter also came to protect a woman's right to inheritance, which is something they didn't have before. Protecting and preserving the inheritance of orphans was now required as well. It was common practice that when someone died and left behind children, other family members, usually men, would claim the children's inheritance. It was also common that when an orphan girl would grow up and get married, she would not get any dowry from the man she was marrying. The chapter came to end all such practices that took advantage of women and orphans. Women would now have financial protection and independence, and men can no longer claim their inheritance, dowry, or any of their personal property. Allah would also legislate how inheritance should be divided among all family members of the deceased, listing all the different scenarios and the proper distribution. And although there are certain scenarios where a male can inherit twice as much as a female, there are many other scenarios where a female can either inherit the same amount as a male, more than a male, or can inherit while another male relative cannot.
All right, lot there. It seems like what this chapter is trying to do is kind of like bring some balance or equality in a time where something would have been lacking. The thing that kind of like sticks out to me is that it's like a verse on like, you know, how women should be treated and what should be going on. And the first thing that comes to my mind is like, well, yeah, but, you know, not that this stuff that I've heard is bad, but that it's so different depending on the culture that you come from, depending on who you are and like what your beliefs and values are. It may, you know, run in conflict with something like this. Like I you know, there are other sides to this. It'll be interesting to see where the rest of this chapter goes and some of the things that it mentions. But depending on where you are in the world, there's people who are going to have problem with some of the stuff that's being said or pointed out here, right?
It's interesting to me that there's this chunk of history where everybody kind of widely acknowledges like the mistreatment of women or something like that, right? And these days I'm a little bit baffled by it. Because women make up like what, half the population of the planet or something? I don't know what the ratio is precisely, but I would imagine it's got to be around half. And I look at women and I'm like, I could look out among the variety of men and women and be like, some of these dudes are soft serve ice cream. And some of these women are like gym women. Some women are large. And I'm not just talking about like trans women or women wrapped up in some kind of identity, like trying to be tough. I mean, like some women by their nature are like large and can throw their weight around and smart. And then you see, same with vice versa. You see delicate women and you see delicate men. You see tough guys, abnormally tough guys. And I'm like, who's making these systems? A lot of this is overly rule-based to me. You know me. I'm not trying to judge any religion or anything like that. But I'm seeing beyond systems and systems that are even there for good reason and systems that have worked and the reasons behind those things. I'm like, I'm interested in what transcends systems here. And I wonder what would happen to sexuality without assumptions about it, without some kind of like knee-jerk, I already have assumptions, I'm going to like kind of force what I already think, but like a sincere open mind about what a reality without marriage might be, or a reality without rules in terms of mating. Because I think rules stop certain people from getting together. They're like, well, it would be inappropriate for me to be with this type of person.
Well, it's a good point because there's a progressive liberal side of this where things are evolving, things are changing depending on where you are in the world. People might decide to set up family structures in a completely different way. What if they I'm sure probably in the next 200 years, not sure, but I anticipate that you're going to be seeing different communal lifestyles that, definitely contradict or challenge what we've traditionally for a long, long time have thought how it should be, like a mom and a dad and a kids.
Well, especially if people have evolved to like a hyper considerate, conscientious degree, like people not wanting to hurt each other, like genuine togetherness, like an evolved type of people that is not reflected by and large nowadays.
Yeah,
we got like a fake aping version of that, like where we've like set up rules that you can't break. But I mean like a genuine consideration for each other where, how are we going to bring people up so that because the more people that we have that are viable partners, nobody's left out. Everybody can have sex with everybody and interchange partners. That's like a nightmare. Some people just plug to their ears and are rocking back and forth because they can't handle what I just said. But in the future, I'm imagining, why couldn't you have a society where partners are more interchangeable, but nobody's being left in the dust. Nobody's not getting the affection they need.
No one's being claimed as ownership to another person.
And I don't think the answer is like, well, that was crazy and chaos and people were getting murdered because that's why the Lord gave us this. I don't think necessarily that's definitely the answer. I think some things were in place and especially probably reflect a time where there was less information afoot, less capacity to meet needs. When things were more brutal, it was probably like one wife at a time, guys. Come on.
I was just watching a podcast the other day where a guy was talking about that. He was kind of critiquing another spiritual teacher who was talking about his like polygamy, almost like his like going out and having sex with a lot of women, and how it was like raising his sexual like vibration and understanding. And he was being like, bring it back a notch here, guys, in terms of like the political community. Like in terms of, and he was kind of stating that, like most men can't handle one woman. Yes. And you want to go around and have multiple women. And he was like, and he also kind of pointed, it was like the true like spiritual essence. It was like, he wasn't saying that you can't have like multiple sexual partners, but he was saying like, he actually pointed out that if it was actually genuine and authentic, it would probably be the woman who came to him and suggested it to the male and be like, she felt so safe and confident in a relationship with a man that she was the one that brought it to him.
Oh, who does it make more sense would even have multiple partners, the man or the woman? A woman can have multiple orgasms.
Yeah.
Dudes, if we're being real here and a little bit crass, it's like they go and it's like, all right, who's next? Tag me in. You know what I mean? A woman's getting off for hours potentially. That's some women's nightmare. I'm not trying to suggest anything as a rule, but I'm saying I'm obviously not just talking about polygamy from the guy's perspective. I'm talking about from the girl's perspective too. A mature society where no one's getting hurt. No one's like, but that's mine. Yeah. I'm a one-person thing.
Yeah, I know.
But I recognize that that's like the limits of what I was that's what I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
I'm saying future generations that have grown past fearfulness and covetousness and get to the point where they're like, we share everything and it's not gross. We're all smart. We're all responsible.
Yeah.
We're all honest with each other and we all care deeply about each other. And so people are free to do things they never were before because they were suppressed and people were dangerous. Yeah. Like you said, most dudes can't even barely handle one woman. Let's cover all spousal abuse first. Let's cover all inconsiderateness. You have a generous lover, right? Before you go finding another one to give your shitty sex to. You nailed the first one perfectly, right? You know what I'm saying? But if everybody can handle it, I think we could do away with like rules that seem to keep an immature society in order. You know what I mean? We can't handle it. It can't handle paradise yet. Yeah. So we got to like keep things from being chaos. But we're looking to the future. That's what we're doing. We're pontificating and toying with ideas. You don't have to go do anything. You just enjoy.
All right. Well, we're halfway through this. We'll continue on to the end and meet you at the end.
The chapter then goes on to discuss what is considered to be a lawful and appropriate relationship between a man and a woman, with marriage being the foundation of any acceptable relationship, forbidding adultery as it is harmful to any society and was another way that men took advantage of women. This places a tremendous value on the sanctity of marriage and how it's a legal contract that would protect women. The chapter also mentions who a man can lawfully marry and who he cannot. For example, a son used to inherit his father's wives who were not his biological mother after he died. This now became prohibited in Islam. Along with other women, a man cannot marry. The chapter also establishes the role of a husband as the provider and protector of his wife, certainly not in a controlling or abusive manner, instead as someone who is responsible for taking care of his wife and prioritizing her needs, removing any burden on the wife to contribute financially to the household, maintaining her financial independence from her husband. And if a husband were to divorce his wife, there are certain obligations placed on him to preserve her dignity and financial well-being after marriage. All these rules for marriage, divorce, inheritance, and taking care of orphans are in place to help maintain a fair and equitable balance in society, with justice and mercy being at the core of every interaction. Allah would call on us to stand up for justice. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما فلا تتبعوا الهوى أن تعدلوا وإن تلوا أو تعرضوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا. O believers, stand firm for justice, as witnesses for God, even if it is against yourselves, your parents, or close relatives, be they rich or poor. God is best to ensure their interest, so do not let your desires cause you to deviate from justice. If you distort the testimony or refuse to give it, then know that God is certainly all aware of what you do. The chapter would then go on to warn us against hypocrites who are not aligned with Allah and His laws, and try to distort the truth and deceive others. Allah warns that the punishment awaits them on the Day of Judgment. Towards the end of the chapter, Allah reiterates that we must believe in all the prophets that have come before us, and not pick and choose which prophets we accept and which we reject. He also addresses Jews and Christians who have done so in the past by rejecting prior prophets and claiming falsehoods about Mary and Jesus, peace be upon them. يا أهل الكتاب لا تغلوا في دينكم ولا تقولوا على الله إلا الحق إنما المسيح عيسى بن مريم رسول الله وكلمته ألقاها إلى مريم وروح منه فآمنوا بالله ورسله ولا تقولوا ثلاثة انتهوا خيرا لكم إنما الله إله واحد سبحانه أن يكون له ولد له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وكفى بالله وكيلا. O people of the book, do not go to extremes regarding your faith. Say nothing about God except the truth. The Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, was no more than a messenger of God, and the fulfillment of His word through Mary, and a spirit created by a command from Him. So believe in God and His messengers, and do not say Trinity. Stop, for your own good. God is only one God. Glory be to Him. He is far above having a son. To Him belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth, and God is sufficient as a trustee of affairs. Allah is warning the Jews against denying Jesus as the Messiah, and warning the Christians against calling Jesus God.
You know, that last part's so interesting to me because on one hand, I agree with that. I'm like, man, that's pretty good, is to warn people about denying Jesus, and on the other hand, warn people about deifying Jesus. The only caveat I'd put in there, and maybe it's just comes from a limited perspective, is I see so much power in the people that do deify Jesus, in a sense. Like, when you've been desolate and destroyed, some people, the only thing they got to hang on to in the storm is sweet Jesus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the idea of being like, don't do that. They're like, well, then forget it. I'm just going to be a freaking thief then or something. You know what I mean? Like, some people really need Christ to be God for them. Yeah. And it's tough. You know what I mean? Because in one sense, it's like, yeah, you're probably onto something by saying, listen, He was special and He was a messenger, but there's only one God here that we should be focusing on. I kind of agree with that. The minor God distractions, you know what I mean, taking you away from whatever Allah really is. I don't know.
Well, another solid Project Zamzam video. Hani does a very good job of putting these all together. Now, this has a very traditional view of family and the woman's place and, what a man is supposed to do and all that. I think this is one of the, walls that Islam is up against as it faces the 21st century. And, things are progressing and changing, innovation and technology exponentially rising, changing the fabric of how we actually live life. I think this will be one of the hurdles that Islam, will be up against with its traditions. But let us know in the comments, what do you think? Do you worry about it? Do you think about it? Do you see it changing in your own culture, especially if you come from a more traditional based? I've seen it change in my life. We came from a pretty old school traditional version of Christianity, and we had to see it change over over a couple decades. The church ain't the same church it was 20 years ago. That for sure.
Pastors subtly change over time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Develop, morph.
Yeah. Old school believers, man.
How do you think somebody from 1902, whether they're Christian, Muslim, or Hindu, would regard somebody that claims to be Christian, Hindu, or Muslim today? They're like, I'm a Christian, or I'm a Muslim, or I'm a Hindu. Somebody from 1902 might be like horrified or something, what?
Yeah.
You look at the clothes you're wearing, look at the media you watch, listen to the music that's going. You're not going to stone that guy to death. Listen to what he's doing over there.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm saying chances are you're already missing the mark by some person that's more traditional than you from some other era.
Yeah.
The bottom line is this: rather than me being like, don't you want a utopia where everybody has sex with each other? Rather than me doing that,
Yeah.
I'll say this: what will be, will be.
Yeah.
And then who knows what'll happen? What if all the books got destroyed in some cataclysm and some new dusty messenger emerged from the wilderness and was like, I have the thing, and a whole new set of rules came out from God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you go 1,000 years from that. What will be, will be. What is what is. I can't sit there and like promote love or promote hate.
Yeah.
I mean, what do I want people, what is the reality of how I feel? The reality is I'm taking it instant by instant. I'm taking it moment by moment because it's way too painful to staple a bunch of hard and fast rules that permanently I have to follow forever.
That was part of a painful process, you know, developing, going through my own personal spiritual journey, giving up on some of my rigid beliefs over the years.
Some of those are like, you have to feel guilty. You have to walk around with guilt.
I still, even though I like even know differently now or feel differently about them, I still like on some level feel like I only have a certain level of how far I can go. And it'll probably be my kids who like because these things are like traumaed into us to you know, like be a certain way.
Certain patterns are traumaed in, and then you get so used to them, you're like, I don't know what's worse, giving it up or hanging on to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm so used to guilt. What am I going to do without guilt?
Well, if you're a Muslim and you're over 40 or 50, be honest. Be honest in the comments. Have you seen like the evolution of your faith develop where like when I was younger, everyone used to wear like the full, like you can't see anything. And now all the girls got their faces showing.
Yeah.
And like, has it changed like what you used to do when you went to the mosque, whenever you go?
Yeah.
You know, has that
Good
evolved
question.
and changed
Please
over the
answer
years?
that. Please answer that question about what you've noticed change in your life. That will be, if you have an answer for that, if you're like, nothing's changed, I mean, go for it. If that's the true answer.
Yeah.
But just say what's true in the comments, please, because that will enlighten people if they scroll through it and they're like, holy crap, things have changed?
Yeah.
Just chew on it. Don't go running to do something about that. Just acknowledge what changes and what really is static.
Yeah. All right, guys. We'll end it here.
Gold.
Hopefully you enjoyed this reaction. If you did, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share this with a friend, and everyone till next time. Stay spiritual.